Welcome to another weekly show by North Shore Prep Report. We're excited to have a playoff edition this time. Cass, I'm not sure if there's a better time of the year. It's football playoff time. We got a bunch of teams in it. We got volleyball teams and heading to Lafayette tomorrow. We got 6 games there. Exciting time on the North Shore.
For sure. I think I told someone this yesterday. This is at least on the football side of it, this is the best week of the year until next week. And then it just gets better. But then when you throw volleyball into the mix and what's going down at the Cajun Dome, which I know we said it last time, that is an awesome event to go to. I know I'm jealous of you. You'll be there. But yeah, a great time of the year. And we got some great weather.
Yeah, I know it got cool just enough. We'll see if it killed the bugs or if the bugs are going to come back out when it gets hot again or not. But look, we'll jump into the playoff stuff. But first, I kind of want to get a little bit into what we did with the with stats and stuff over this week. You know, we've got our passing leaders up here. And what we did was we kind of put the area passing stuff up, but passing yards, touchdowns, and completions. Any outliers there that you see, Cass, that you know, something that surprises you or something that's different?
Nothing that's an outlier or surprising. I think maybe something that jumps off the page, especially when you're looking at the passing yards leader. When you talk about Baker from St. Helena as a sophomore, he's up there with 1,900 yards. You kind of expect Jacob Crane to be there, and I don't want to dismiss what he's done, but you expect it from him, right? And I think that's a credit to him. But look down that list. Ricky Williams on the list, missing 2 games. Like, that's impressive. Crew Calora as a freshman, doing what he did with, you know, throwing for 1,700 yards and 17 touchdowns and not turning the ball over a whole lot. And we'll save it for later when we get into the brackets, but this Mandeville team is scary. But the other scary team, the leader of the scary team, DeJohn Howard is out. Like, that's something. The way that he has come on with that offense. Look, and this area is so rich in talent, and there's good players at every school. But these guys kind of standing up above the rest with great years. But those were the ones that my eyes, shifted to right off the bat.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things, and I put the entire list there, you know, the top 12, the thing that I'm most excited about on the quarterback side is just the youth. And you know, throughout the summer, as we went to all these team previews and I met with all these coaches, literally all but like 2 or 3 teams were like, we've got a new quarterback. We got to figure out the quarterback spot. If we can figure out the quarterback spot, we'll be okay. And you look down the list: sophomore, junior, freshman, junior, senior, junior. Like next year is going to be wild on the offensive side of the football. So I'm really excited about that.
A lot of sleepless nights for defensive coordinators over here when you talk about all the returning. And it's not just quarterbacks that are returning; like, it's productive quarterbacks that are returning, which makes it even more exciting.
Yeah, I may have to look for an offensive job next year. I don't want to do that again.
Good luck.
You know, pulling up the running backs, kind of the same thing. You know, to me, this was kind of the who's who of what was going to happen this season. Jaquan Jones has obviously had a phenomenal year, but if you watched the young man play last year, you kind of saw – I won't say you saw this coming, but you knew he was going to be successful. Some big names on the list: Cody Corrales and Cam Casnave. Those 2 kids, they train together. They've been around a long time. They've had great careers. Cam just hit 5,000 yards for his career. He's over 80 touchdowns now. That's a really impressive career. And then, to me, the outlier of the group is Brody Loudermilk, who is, you know, to me, is he the best player on the best team? Probably so, right? So, you know, kudos to him. He leads the area in touchdowns as a quarterback, and he can throw it too. So, you know, he brings a lot of things to the table.
Yeah, and, you know, we talk about maybe a youth movement of sorts on the quarterback side, and not, you know, we have juniors thrown into this mix here too, but this is maybe the experience position on the North Shore. And like you said, with Jaquan Jones and Cody Corrales and Cam Casnave, we knew that something like this was almost inevitable coming into the year, which I think makes it even more impressive that they were able to put those numbers up, because if we know it, the guys that are trying to stop it know it too. So they've had tremendous, they've had tremendous seasons. But you're right, Brody Loudermilk, what he has done from the quarterback position, and the fact that he can throw the football in that offense makes Lakeshore, at least for this year, a team to maybe keep an eye on headed into the playoffs. Rylan James, I think, at LaRanger as well. I know he's kind of battled some injuries here of late. They do get him back next year, so that'll be good for Coach Powell and the Wolves. But that's one to keep an eye on. I think he has an opportunity to be one of the better ones in the area, or not just area, but in the state. And then I got to give a shout out to my guy Riley Jones too, scored 19 touchdowns, rushing for over 1,000 yards for Hannon. Who that's a team as we look forward to next year has a chance to be pretty dang good.
Yeah, they've got somebody at every position coming back. Speaking of that, you've got on this list, Hunter Lay ends up with 55 receptions at Hannon, right at about 10 yards a catch. You can see that extending next year. With Braden Sprang coming back and that offense kind of evolving. The outlier on the receiving side for me, I knew that Franklinton was going to have a high-powered offense. The question was who outside of DeMikes McClain was going to be the guy. They lost another great receiver last year. They lost what I think was the second best running back in the area last year inside. So getting Jaden Burkhalter, and Coach was high on him early in the summer. I think he knew what he had there. It's no secret, but I think Jaden probably plays quarterback next year and could do some really dynamic things. But he had a great year. And then Slidell and Salmon. I mean, the offense in East St. Tammany this year was just bonkers, right? And I have to throw Chalmette in that mix too. Breeze Wilson at quarterback, Dana Antoine Jr. If you watched Chalmette play, he was a man amongst boys. Like he will play at the next level. So I hope somebody gets on him soon. But it's another exciting group. You've got Burkhalter, you've got Jake Giacchetti at Mandeville, you got Luke DeMello at Mandeville as well. They'll be returning with a quarterback in Crew Calora, who's got 3 more years. Tons of talent here. We got our favorite guy, Donut, at number 10 there at Reginald Monroe. And then Tidarius Holland, who I've seen a couple times in person. He's really dynamic. He plays both ways. So exciting group of players for sure.
Yeah, and that's you look at if you're a Franklinton Demon fan, you've got to be excited looking at all these lists when you got Jake Crane up at the top of the quarterbacks, and then you're right, having another weapon, Asada McClain, and having Burkhalter do what he did. He's got 12 touchdowns receiving, which that's crazy. That offense, you're right. We knew it was going to be good. Being this explosive maybe is something we couldn't have foreseen. And if you're a Skipper fan, not only are you fired up for you got guys littered all over this list, but they all come back. Like you said, they all come back. So that's something to look forward to. But Dana Antoine, when you just look at him, his physical, the presence that he has, he looks like not just a college football receiver, but a Division I receiver. And some of the catches he's made, it's impressive. Yeah,
the thing I love about him, he looks the part, but he plays the part.
He plays the part. Yeah.
He brings it all. And I think, and we'll get into the playoffs here in a second, but I think one of my most disappointing things of the season was Chalmette not making the playoffs. Not disappointed in the team, but disappointed because I just felt like that group of kids were so good and they played so well, and they could have really done some damage if they snuck in, right? So, there's a few of those kids that are going to go off to college, and that's good for them. But you'd kind of like to see more of those kids get opportunities for sure.
No, that's exactly right. And like, not only is it disappointing for them, it's almost it's almost surprising, and it's like feel like we're leaving something out there because there is no doubt that had they gotten in, there's a chance that they do what they did last year and just make a run to the finals. That's how good. So defensively, that's how good they were. And when you have a quarterback like Breeze Wilson and a receiver like Dane Antoine, you can go score. So that's
no doubt.
That's the truth. I mean, disappointing. That's one that they're kicking themselves.
No doubt.
But that's just the way it is.
So look, let's kick off the playoff coverage here. To me, we talked Saturday morning on a show, and we talked throughout the weekend, and I think there's some absolutely fantastic matchups. One thing that I've learned a little bit about the volleyball thing is, chalk's the way to go. Those girls, higher seeds, it's 3 sets to none. I do, and we'll get into volleyball later, but I do have to give huge credit to Mandeville. I mean, they went 5 sets and gave their all in that loss last Friday. But so let's start off with St. Paul's and Pineville. That matchup to me is an intriguing one. Obviously, I think St. Paul's in this one is kind of the team that's going to be there. I don't know that they're not best suited to make the deepest run. Now, I'll say that it's Division I select, so anybody making a run outside of a couple teams is going to be difficult, right? But
Yeah.
they can run the ball well. They play really well defense. You can see on the graphic there, Pineville gives up a slew of points. I mean, they're averaging 43 points a game on defense given up. I think St. Paul's, gets out to an early lead here and just kind of runs the ball with Cody and continues to go.
I think you're right. And when you look at St. Paul's path to get to at least to the quarterfinals, where it looks like they're going to run in the car, but the winner of this game plays at Evangel. And I think if you could draw up 2 games in which you were going to be a draw to get to the quarterfinals, you might pick Pineville, and you definitely, of the 8 that got buys, Evangel might be the one to go to. Like, yes, you got to take a long bus trip, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse. Like, you have to go beat Pineville. And Pineville's a team, they're in that 2-5A district with Neville, Alexandria, West Monroe, Ruston, and Washita Parish. So they've lost, and they didn't win a district game. That's why. That's, and some of those numbers may be skewed a little bit. I think Pineville, they're probably excited to see someone else. So they're going to come down knowing that they're battle tested. They've seen the best of the best. But this St. Paul's rushing attack with Corrales, I think might just be too much. Having a game at home obviously is a big plus. Having a seasoned team, a veteran team, that you could say focused throughout that time. And I think you're right. If they can get out to an early lead, I think they're the better team. Obviously, they're the higher seed, but a game that they can maybe control the line of scrimmage, control the time possession, and they can get out and go reward themselves with a 5-hour bus trip up to Evangel.
Yeah, and look, I mean, a matchup with Pop Houston and that group up in Evangel, it's that's a neat experience and a great place to play. The good news to me is we talk about this, I feel like every show, but I can't not say it. Coach Sears and what he's done there from a schedule standpoint has really helped. And we'll talk districts and redistrict coming up here in a bit, because I want to get your opinion on some things. But one thing that the smaller districts have allowed, and Coach Sears alluded to this multiple times, was it gives them a better opportunity to schedule some things and some other opponents and, work on PowerPoints and that kind of thing. So there's value in it for sure.
No, there is. The only thing that I would say, and I know they played at Live Oak, a lot of those games they get at home. So traveling may be like, that may be a little bit different. But again, Coach Sears, that staff, they've done this for about 25 years. I mean, they know what they're doing. So, getting on the bus is nothing today. It's just different.
And I'll say this. If you got to get on a bus and go on the road, you want to run a game in a defense and a senior-laden team, it works, right? Right.
Especially if you're going to get, again, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but especially if you're going to go on the road and play one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Let's take our running game with us and let's hold the football and not let him get it. So.
No doubt. I'm with you there. Look, this next matchup, this is a tough one for me. Captain Shreve and Hammond. If you pay attention to this, it's tricky, because if you look at what Captain Shreve has done and who they've done it against, their 4 losses are against Parkway, Evangel, Destrehan, and I'm forgetting the fourth one, and Washita Parish in week 1, right?
Yeah.
So, that's a matchup. Captain Shreve ended St. Paul's season last season, right? If I remember correctly.
Yep, they did.
So
no, I think it was Bird.
I'm sorry, Bird. That's right. That's right. So, they're a team that's intriguing to me because they can score. They've averaged 44 points a game, and they're 6-4, right? So now they've given up a slew of points on defense, which doesn't help them against a Hammond team who's dynamic. I'm going to tell you what I've noticed about Hammond here recently, and it's been in the last 4 weeks. And I talked to Coach Buckles about this about 5 weeks ago, which was, hey, two's got to get the ball more, Coach. Like, he's having 12 carry games and 13 carry games. He's a 20, 25 carry a game guy. And he's done that the last few weeks, and it's bode really well. And even in that loss to Covington, they were in plus territory a lot. And that game was very close in the fourth quarter.
And I think this matchup for Hammond is going to lend itself to that, because while you look at Shreve's their defensive points per game, that district, if you've ever looked at those numbers and those scores on every price, it blows my mind. It absolutely, like, if you hold somebody, and I say hold, meaning knowing what I'm saying, if you hold somebody to 50 points, you're in. But it's
Yeah.
I think that lends itself to Hammond running the football. Now, you may be going out there if I'm Coach Buckles in a tours and trying to control the clock and
Mhm.
time of possession, you just might bust some runs and score, based on what
Yeah.
this defense looks like. But that's okay. But I think the matchups are everything in playoffs, and I think this matchup favors Hammond because they have such dynamic playmakers, and they're going to have to score. Like they're not going to win this game 27-20. Like they're going
No,
to have to
no.
score, and I think they can.
Well, and I'll say this, and this comes from it, probably not a surprise to me as a special teams coach, but special teams travels. Special
Right.
teams travels, right? If
Right.
you're sound on special teams and you play well, Donut when he's deep, if Captain Shreve
Mhm.
doesn't know who he is, he's going to house one. Like
Yep.
he's that dynamic. He did it all season, early in the season, then kind of teams around here figured it out and stopped doing it. But it's an exciting matchup. And look, kudos to Coach Buckles. I think I went back. It's 5 years in a row with one additional win each season. It's
Mhm.
their first time in 20 years that they've won seven games in a season.
It's got to be. I don't know when the last time they hosted a playoff game. I mean,
21 years ago.
yeah, that's so good for that school and that
Yeah.
community. Because look, I lived in Hammond for 15 years. That town, there's a lot of Hammond tornado pride there. I mean, to be honest, there just wasn't a lot to get behind here. But Coach Buckles has
Yeah.
done such a great job that I hope they have a really good turnout on Friday night, and then obviously I hope they go out there and play well. So
Yeah, well, I'll age myself here, but I remember the days of Fred Booker and Marvin Jones and those guys going
there
down the
you
chute.
go.
They were different for sure.
Yep.
Moving into this next matchup, which I think is just the next few are fantastic matchups.
Mhm.
When you get those middle seeded teams, I think anything can happen. Mandeville's heading to Thibodeau. Lowell North Seas, coach at Thibodeau, took over a program that's had way too many coaches in the last few years for that
Yeah.
program, and they've done really well. They lose last week. They'd have been 9-1, but they lose last week to Destrehan, who's on an absolute tear right now. They're sitting there at 8-2, and they're really good on both sides of the ball. But once again, I'm not going to say the F word, and I don't mean the bad F word. I mean the freshman word.
He's
Uh,
not. Yeah, he's not.
talking about it because I can't say it anymore. But
Mhm.
Mandeville's another one that I like what they do and how they do it. They'll travel well with it. They would probably admit that they haven't run the ball as well as they would like to, effectively enough. But Crew has run the ball well, and they've
Mhm.
used Jake Cicchetti and Luke DeMello a little bit as an extension of that running game with some shorter pass and stuff. And it started to really open up, and they're going vertical now, which has kind of expanded that offense.
Yeah, and that's gonna be kind of what they have to do because, like you said, this Thibodeau team, 8-2 under Coach Narcisse, he's done a tremendous job. Their losses were to Destrehan last week, like you said, and to Hahnville, and they also beat a
Yeah.
really good Terrebonne team in Week 9. So
Yep.
that was an impressive victory for Thibodeau. And look, these two teams played in the playoffs last year. Mandeville won 31-16, so this is a little bit of not a little bit, it's a rematch. Although the players in both teams are different, and you can kind of see this coming from Mandeville, like in week 3 or 4. Once Crew kind of, it was like, okay, he's going to be the quarterback for the rest of the season. So let's just kind
Yeah.
of start building some stuff. They have played their best football as of late. They've gotten better, and him using his legs in a running game is going to be huge. And getting the ball to the perimeter quickly to Giacchetti and DeMello, that's like you said, that's going to have to be their running game and they're going to need to use it. The fact that this game's at Thibodeau, that community, that atmosphere is probably going to be pretty dang good on Friday night. But again, I think we've mentioned it on Saturday. The staff knows how to win. This Mandeville Skipper staff, they know how to win. These guys have been there and done that. This might be my favorite matchup of the week.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't blame you there. Mine's coming up here. I think it's Salmon and Zachary. I just I get so enamored with offenses that can do multiple things, and with running quarterbacks who are dual threat. I think it's the evolution of high school football, and to me, the first guy I saw do it was a Salmon quarterback. It was Tristan Smith back in
Yeah,
2001 against
he was pretty good.
John Curtis in the Superdome. I've never seen anybody do that to John Curtis before. But
Uh-huh.
one thing that allows you is you're always in the game. And I'll say this: Salmon's had, gosh, dog, I think like it feels like they've had 5 playoff games this season.
Yeah.
Week one against Mandeville is a wild game, right? Salmon could have won that game. Week 2, they're at East Ascension. If you want to watch a good football game,
That was
go
great.
watch Week 2 against East Ascension. Absolutely crazy. Coach Brock Landry does a great job there. They're a really good football team, and that game was back and forth the whole time. I think DeJon Howard might be, my thought is kind of like going into next year, what am I most excited about? Who are some of the kids that I'm most excited about? I mean, DeJon he's really at the top of my list because I think he's so dynamic in what he does, because he can run it and he can throw it, and he's got some weapons to do so with.
Yeah, and if you look back at Salmon's game last week, talking about how you're never out of the game, they were down 10 with 4 minutes left to Chalmette. They scored with a minute and 4 seconds left, recovered onside kick, and score again. When I say they, I mean Howard. DeJon Howard scored both.
Yeah.
But that, and I'm not a big proponent of carrying things over from week to week because it's a completely different game, a completely different set of circumstances. But when you win like that, and like he's been their guy all year, but like he solidified that last week, the confidence it gives to everyone else on that team that, it doesn't matter that we're going to Zachary and Zachary is what they are. Like we have DeJon Howard and y'all don't. And that's kind of what it feels like. And I say that they have a running back in Jimmy Chancey that's rushed for 1,000 yards. And like there's weapons on the outside. They can also throw the football. This one, I told you before we started, I think Salmon's going to go win the game. And like it's not going to be easy, obviously. And I think Zachary's really good. But Zachary's had a few games this year, like the Liberty game stands out to me. Someone similar to maybe how Salmon is. Liberty went up there and put 50 points on him. So that kind of gives me some hope that Salmon can go up and do the same thing.
Well, and I'll tell you what I like a lot about Salmon offensively is, Terrence Mitchell is the guy. Like he's a difference maker. He's a player. But Rayshawn Coleman, they've got a couple other receivers that can really catch it. They can do whatever they want on offense, and they have the ability to slow it down and run a power run game with Jimmy Chansey. The last few games they haven't run him a whole lot. They haven't needed to, and they've done some different stuff offensively. But I mean, they get a 2-touchdown lead. You know what Coach Tudor's going to do. I mean, he's going to lean on his guys for sure. But that's an exciting
before they get a 2-touchdown lead. That might be like if
I would
by 7. Yeah, especially on the road. Hey, we're up by 1. All right, look, here you go, Chancey. Take us home.
We're taking the wheel there. All right, let's move on to another absolutely fantastic matchup. Slidell is traveling to Hahnville. I've got to give Coach Page and that group a ton of credit. After last season, it was bad, right? But he talked a lot about kind of the last 2 games of last year and how he thought he got the most out of the kids. And it was kind of surprising, but he was very encouraged by it. And now you see kind of the fruits of the labor of kind of pushing through the season in the summer and all that. Huge win last week against Northshore to kind of get into the playoffs and get themselves into a good spot. Tough road game at Hahnville. You're going to the River Parishes. You're going to play at Hahnville. Hahnville offensively has been very good. Like very, very good. I think until the Destrehan game in week 8, their quarterback had like 20-something touchdowns and no interceptions.
Yeah, no, that's not an easy. I don't have to tell you this. That's not an easy place to play.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite and least favorite at the same time. If that makes sense.
Makes total sense.
You don't show up at Hahnville and walk away with a victory. You might play more than 11 over there too. That's just my opinion.
Where did you go to high school?
I'll leave that out.
That's right.
But look,
this is a great matchup.
It is, and Coach Bourne at Hahnville, he was a Destrehan guy for a long time and offense coordinator over there. He's brought, offenses travel and that's fine, but he's brought a culture and some difference over there. You can see they're only giving up 19 points a game. I say only. that's a really good high school defense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In today's world, like if you can say, hey, you give up 20, we've got a shot to win.
Mhm. And their two losses. Destrehan scores 49, which I think Destrehan rolls out and they have 49 when they get off the bus every night they
Yeah.
play.
Yep.
Um, they did give up 52 to Terrebonne, but Terrebonne also they have a really good running back, a really big offensive line. But I think when you look at this Hahnville program, it took a dip, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago, and now they're kind of back on the upswing. And there may be a year or two ahead of where Slidell currently is right now. But the Slidell team, though, it's all like they're almost. I don't like the team of destiny, or I mean, because you got to go
Yeah.
play well. But
Yep.
they played with a backup quarterback for 2 weeks. They went and got a huge win on the road at Chalmette in overtime, a game in which was back and forth, and they had every reason to kind of tap out at the end of that game after Chalmette
Oh
goes
yeah.
and makes their drive. And then they get the big win last week against North Shore when they get Ricky Williams back. Like this is another. A lot of teams going into the playoffs are playing with confidence because they're there for a reason. But this is another team with a 2-game winning streak. The way that it's done, and you could tell the culture of that program is starting to take hold. And it
Yeah.
like that's how they do what they've done the last 2 weeks, no matter who's at quarterback. And I think having both of those guys be able to play, it wouldn't shock me if we see both of them play quarterback. Like it just adds another element, and you've got to throw out all whatever tricks you got in the bag, you're throwing them out. So that may be something that's just an unforeseen element to the offense.
Yeah, and look, if Stanley Lang's a quarterback, it gives them an opportunity to get Ricky Williams on the field and get him the ball as well amongst
Yep.
everyone else. So, I'm intrigued about that. The thing that I like about this for Slidell is in Hahnville's 2 losses. Hahnville, Destrehan slings it a little bit, but they run the ball really well.
Uh-huh.
With Dabney in that group, and Terrebonne's got a fantastic running back that runs it well too. Don't be fooled by Slidell's numbers; they run the football. I mean,
Right.
Jaquan Jones is 233 carries. He's averaging 23 carries a game, right? And he's a strong kid. He's a shorter kid, but he's strongly built, and he runs with power. So I'm excited about this one for Slidell for sure.
Yep.
Last one in Division I. It's a big one. The Covington Lions, which we'll just say I don't think Coach Salter knows who the Covington Lions are right now.
No.
But look, it wouldn't surprise me if they went in and it got away from them early, and it wouldn't surprise me if they went in and absolutely tore things up at Parkway. And I mean that.
Uh-huh. No, that's absolutely right. And I think if we had Coach Salter on, he'd probably say the same thing. I don't think there's a result that would surprise anyone who has followed or watched this Covington team. You just, as a fan of Covington, you just hope that you go out and get the ceiling of what they could be, because that team can go beat Parkway.
Oh yeah,
They just as soon could go up there and Parkway can do what they did to many of an opponent this year
yeah,
and kind of run them out the building. So it's not going to be easy. I think the thing that maybe gives me some pause with this one is Parkway again in that District 1-5A. Parkway's going to score, and I think this Covington defense it's so talented, especially in the back end. But Parkway's going to score. Can Covington figure out a way to score enough? And that's
yeah.
something that I don't know.
My fear here for Covington is I won't say it has to be a low scoring game, but they can't go blow to blow with Parkway offensively.
No,
It
this
can't.
game it needs to be played in the 30s, and
Yep.
Parkway has scored less than 30 points exactly one time this year, and it was last week. Every other time they scored more than 40. So,
Well, look, I'm going to say it until the season's over, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I still think Covington's defense is one of the most talented groups
me too.
around. They can do it on all levels. They've got multiple Division I guys on there, and look, if they're going to figure it out, it's the week to figure it out. That's for sure.
Yeah, now would be a good time.
Yeah, now is the time to figure it out. There's no other time.
That is correct.
So this next one, let's talk about this. Let's move to Division II. Division II select here, and that's Laranja at St. Michael's. I talked to somebody, a St. Michael's person here this weekend, and he said, "Hey, what do you think about Laranja?" And I said, "I think they're better than their record.
Mhm.
If Rylan James comes back, they're a different team altogether. And he said, well, that sucks because I don't think we're as good as our record, right? He said, I think we've won some games that maybe shouldn't have. But it's an intriguing matchup. I think, and I don't know this, Cass, maybe you've talked to Coach Powell, but I don't know if Rylan James is coming back. But if he is, they're a different football team.
They are a different football team. I'll say
We'll
this.
we'll leave it at that.
It
Uh,
won't shock me if they win. And I agree with you. I think they're better than St. Michael's. And the other thing not to forget, and again, it's different players and all that stuff. St. Michael was a 9 seed last year. Hannon barely got in the playoffs as a 24 seed and went over here and beat them. Now,
yeah,
what does that mean for this year? To be honest, probably nothing at all. It's just funny that's how it worked out. But LaRondra knows that, and St.
yep,
Michael's knows that as well. But I'm
yeah,
with you. I think if you go athlete for athlete, I think LaRondra is better.
well, look,
And I, I think they. I don't know if there's Vegas odds on the game. It wouldn't. If they might be a favorite. I mean, that's
yeah,
just how it worked out.
LaRodge's +1 because it's a
That's
road
what we
game.
got because of the road
Yeah,
game. Okay, yeah, no, you got it. But I think
we'll,
that's
we'll
where I'm
start
at.
getting those odds scrolling at the bottom here soon.
There we go.
Um,
That'd be
I, I
great.
think I think the intriguing thing here is if LaRonja can run the ball effectively and get out to a lead. I think that bodes well because I think it kind of puts that thought in the head of some
Hmm.
St. Michael's kids of oh, here we go again, right? But
Yeah.
LaRonja's physical, man. Like I'm going to say it. You don't play in that district 7-4A unless you're physical, and they are. The last couple weeks, Tidarius Holland, I got to give my boy some credit. He's really, shown off on the outside offensively. He's also played well defensively, but Coach Powell's going to have that group ready to play, and I'm excited. That's an exciting matchup.
Yep.
Lakeshore gets a bye here. I'm really glad they got that 4 seed for them. They've had such a great season that I was look, a bye is very needed when you play a Hanville team in week 10, right? I mean, that was
Hmm.
essentially a playoff game. So,
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yep.
they get to reset here. So, that's a good one. Moving on, Franklinton. Look, if anybody knows what it takes to get to the dome, it's Franklinton, right?
Yeah, and just looking at that part of the bracket before we dig deep into this game, but if you're North DeSoto, who, in my opinion, North DeSoto has the best win of anyone in the state this year. They went on the road to West Monroe and won. Like that's a tremendous win. But if you're North DeSoto and you're looking at the 8-9 possibility, you don't want to see Franklinton.
Mm-mm.
In full disclosure, I think North DeSoto again is the best team in this division. But you have Franklinton, a team that just went to the Superdome. They returned a bunch of guys. They know what the path looks like. They know how to get there. Like this is Coach Salt's time to shine. Like this is what he does. That's a tough draw for North DeSoto. It kind of reminds me Franklinton down there at that 8 of last year. Cecilia, I think they were the 13 seed. They're the 13 seed again this year, but a lower seeded team that is really good, that has some pieces that can make a run. And obviously, Franklinton has to win this game before we start looking ahead. But that capability is there, and when you've got Jacob Crane at quarterback and those 2 receivers on the outside, and Burkhalter and McLean, like it's hard to stop. It's hard to slow down. It's hard to hold that team down for 4 quarters.
Yeah, I had Coach Matt Hughes, offensive coordinator, on Coach's Corner a couple weeks ago, and one thing that I told him was this Franklinton team. It reminds me of last year's Cecilia team, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they get in the playoffs, nobody's going to want to play them. Like
No.
you don't want to play them. And I'll say this offensively. They've gotten Dalton Freeman, their tight end, a little more involved recently, which has helped kind of open up the middle of the field. And then Ricardo Beers Jr. and Raiden Rayborn, who's back now at running back, they've got guys all over the place. The key to me this year, and it's been interesting, is I thought that Franklinton would be better defensively. And I don't mean that they've been bad defensively, but they've got guys like secondary linebacker wise. They've got guys, and look, they're pretty much every coach right now is at district meetings going over district players of the year and that kind of stuff. There'll be Franklin defenders all over it. because
Yep.
they're that good, right? But it's an interesting one. I'm really excited about this matchup.
Yeah, no, that's that. And looking at Franklinton outside, I think the week 2 result with Covington, looking back at it now, is maybe one of the more perplexing results. They just, Covington jumped up to a lead, and Franklin
Yeah,
just couldn't come back. But you lose to Jules Sumner, who has lost twice in 2 years,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then you lose, a game to Lakeshore, which I don't have to remind Franklinton teams about what that is like playing Lakeshore. Like, this is a
yep,
really good Franklinton team that maybe is underseeded based on how good they are.
yeah.
It's going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah, no, like I said, you hit the nail on the head. I don't think anybody wants to see them in a bracket at all.
Mm-mm.
This next matchup, I love this for Pearl River. They get a home game. I think I saw this the other day, but they've won one home playoff game in their history.
Well,
Um,
speaking of, I know we mentioned Cecilia talking about the last game. Cecilia went to Pearl River last year, and that's where their playoff run started. So,
yep,
interestingly
yep.
enough, yeah.
No doubt. And look, here's what I like about Pearl River, and we'll kind of beat the dead horse here, but they can run the football. Big Gage
Mhm.
Duran, he's run for 1,000 yards this season. Their quarterback Hutchinson. I actually was on the phone with Coach Soper, earlier today, and I was talking about Hutchinson. Stat wise, he's not at the top rushing, he's not at the top passing, but he can do so many things. And Coach Soper made a good point. He's like, Mike, he might be the best player on the team defensively. Like
Yeah,
he's a phenomenal defensive back that can make plays. I mean, he made plays against Hannon like crazy. But I think, look, it's Coach Leonard. It's a tough group of kids. He's got them in the playoffs, and they're hosting the home game in week one or in year one, right?
hmm
So to me, season accomplished. But I know Coach Leonard, this isn't going to be enough for those guys, and they have a really good opportunity to go get a home win against Opelousas.
they do. And just looking, Opelousas comes in at 3-6. And one thing I always like to look at when you get these teams in the playoffs, that especially mid to lower seeds, like what did their schedule look like? How did it get? Opelousas' schedule is ridiculous.
Oh
Like
yeah,
they started the year 0-5, but it was losses to Turlings, Lake Charles College Prep, Ash, Zachary, and Natchitoches Central. Like that's a gauntlet if I've ever seen one. But on the flip side of that, you have a Pearl River team that's going to be rough, tough, physical. Like Pearl River kind of embodies, I think, this district that
yeah.
they come from and what exactly it is and what it means to play in that district. Um, and this is a really good spot for Pearl River. I think that Opelousas has got some talent. They're going to have some skill guys that can go, but if Pearl River can control the clock, I think, and make it, muddy up the game a little bit, I think that's their path to win. And I don't want to get. I'm not trying to look too far ahead, but the possibility of going to Bell Chase next isn't impossible. Like so there may be something, but again, you've got to win the first game.
Well, we talk about it. If you can run the ball and play defense, you can be fine. And
Yep.
that's a physical football team that when it's cold, you don't want to play them in that environment. The next matchup, look, I'm just going to give credit to Coach Michael Now of Albany. Getting in the playoffs, that's a huge turnaround for that program. They've got a brutal matchup against a very good Bruley team, who I think has a chance to win it. When I looked at I won't say sleepers; they're a 6 seed, but I really like Bruley.
Yeah, and that Bruley kind of feels similar over there up in that Baton Rouge area to kind of how Jules Sumner is over here.
Yeah,
Like you look and you kind of know they're good, but until you really dig and take a deeper dive, and you don't really realize just how good they are. They have one loss. It was to Plaquemine in week 4. They have some good wins. Defensively, they don't give up a whole lot of points. But kudos to Coach Michael and his staff and this Albany team for practicing this week. Let's just be very honest. Like it didn't look like this is where they were going to be early on, especially the turnaround that he's made coming off of last year. So good for them. And this is invaluable experience, no matter how it goes on Friday night. Invaluable experience for those kids that are going to return in that Albany program, and something that Coach Michael can kind of kickstart his tenure to get some positive momentum going for the Albany Hornets.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time. You got to create a culture that you expect to win. When losing doesn't feel right, it's when you're starting to do some things right, right?
Yep, no doubt,
Otherwise, kids are taking the field ready for bad things to happen.
no
Um,
doubt.
Division three, two non-select ones here. Bugaloosa and Erath. Erath, I know a couple of those kids on that team. I know some parents. They have been dynamic. They've got a couple kids that are absolutely tremendous. Bugaloosa will have their hands full, but once again, it's kind of compare it to Hannon last year. They're a 1-8 Bugaloosa team with a coach that knows how to win. So I'm not going to say they don't have a shot, but it's going to be a really uphill battle for them to travel to Erath and pull that game out.
No, it will, and I think this might be Ebert's second year. I don't know if they went undefeated last year. They at least went 9-1. I know they had
Yeah.
a really good year last year. I think they had an early exit in the playoffs, so they had a tremendous season. Obviously, coming in at 10-0, but yeah, Bogalusa at 1-8. Getting the last team in. This is where I had this discussion with somebody the other day. I like the playoff setup as it is now with the buys because in the years past all 32 teams make it. You're playing, everyone's playing all 5 rounds. If you play a game, there's a chance you could lose.
Yeah.
So, like, if you have a bye, obviously this is
You're in
common
round
knowledge.
two.
You don't have a chance to lose, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So getting that bye is extremely, extremely important. It gives you something to play for. Erath, look, they have to go out and win the game. But that right, Coach Crutchfield, this Bogalusa program, uh, he knows how to win. He's won everywhere. He's been. Those guys will be ready to play. Again, what it looks like, I don't know, but it's going to be a good experience for those guys going over to Southwest Louisiana down the Lafayette area and playing in a playoff game.
Yeah, and look, similarly here, you got a Pine team that'll be hosting Kaplan. Pine sitting here at 7-3. Go look at Pine's schedule and who they played and who they lost against. It's they're dynamic. Coach Seal, I have a ton of respect for him. We jamboreed those guys early in the season, but the offense they run, Trey Knight at quarterback, he can throw it a little bit when they need to. But the thing that I'm most impressed with is the way they run the ball. Christian Williams, I don't know if you play Pine this year in baseball,
Mm-mm,
coach, but Christian
we
Williams
don't.
is one of the better ones around. He's a tremendous baseball player as well. But, he's sitting there at 600 plus yards. Braxton Newman, who actually Braxton's a junior, so we got that wrong on the graphic, but he's leading the entire North Shore in yards per carry. He's at almost 10 yards a carry, 67 carries, 661 yards. So my recipe to success is give the ball to Braxton.
Yeah, that's keep it simple. The kiss method. Keep it simple,
Kiss.
stupid. Yeah,
Kiss.
run it.
Yep.
But again, looking at like you mentioned, Pine's schedule. So pull it up. It's lost to Jewel Sumner, a lost to A Meet, and a lost to Franklinton. How?
Yeah.
That's a lot of teams that have they've beaten a lot of teams. Those 3 teams, like they don't
Yep.
lose many games. So that they're battle tested. They again, getting a home playoff game is huge. Playing in Kaplan, making that long trek from kind of in between Lake Charles, Lafayette area, that's not going to be an easy drive over for them. Probably not an easy place to get to or play. So that's going to be bodes well for Pine for sure.
Well, and I'll tell you this: playing Pine, they play very disciplined football. Defensively, they don't let eyes fool them. They play very disciplined. On offense, their offensive line is very athletic and they're big and strong. So that spread, that wing T kind of helps them a lot. I think they've got a shot to go make some noise. I wouldn't be surprised, to see them here down the line in a couple weeks.
It's kind of like
The
going to
next
the dentist when you play Pine with the defense they play, the offense they run. Like it's no fun. You got to do it, but it's no fun.
Yeah, I didn't mention him, but Caden Stogner, he's a bus guy. He gets off the bus, and you're like, oh my goodness, we have to play this guy defense. And they've got some other kids that are really good. They've got some youngins on that team too, so they'll be good for some time here. The next one, Cohen and they meet. I know you saw Cohen up close against Hannon. Very athletic team.
They are.
I just don't know if anybody is athletic as a meet. Now Jewel Sumner wins that game 21-14 last week, but you you can see how talented A-Meat is. Quarterback Drew Palmer is really talented. I talk about Franklin Morgan Jr. all the time, but he's a defensive back heading Louisiana Tech. Return guy as well. He can make things happen. And then Jamarian Dillon, the running back, he's sensational. He's only a sophomore. They do it right there. They've got a coach that knows how to win. They've done it before. Very dangerous 10 seed, and they get a home game in A-Meat City. So, party in A-Meat on Friday night.
A-Meat City's going to be rocking. They love the Warriors. The only thing they love more than the Warriors is a playoff game at home. So they are going to be that's going to be a great atmosphere. Cohen's quarterback is very really good athlete. Outside of that, there's a few other guys that can go, but I think A-Meat, when you're talking about matching athlete to athlete, not many can do that. Not just in the area, but really in the state. A-Meat has they win, they beat Cohen, and they'll play Lafayette Renaissance Charter Academy, which there's going to be athletes all over the field on that one. That's going to be a fun. Obviously, they got to win. That'll be a fun one to go see. But yeah, Cohen's chance here is to snap it to their quarterback, let chaos ensue, and hope nobody tackles him. That's kind of what they do. But I think A-Meat's got the dudes that can go and do that.
Well, and look, Marshall with Red River Run, we do the show with him on Saturday mornings and the recap. He said it. This Division III select bracket is sensation.
Well, I think it's similar. I think Division III select and Division I select are similar in the fact that it's a bunch of not just really good football programs, but like high level football programs. And then when you talk about this bracket, and then there's Lafayette Christian. Like that's and Division I select. It's like it's all of these programs, and then there's Carr.
And then there's Carr.
But it is this Division III, man. It is so deep and balanced and competitive. I think this is one of my favorite brackets to look at. I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse, but I think this is what playoff football is all about. Like, and I've mentioned this, I think when we did our show the other night. For so long, at least it felt like it was so long when the split was we didn't know what the state was going to look like and how the playoff brackets didn't feel complete.
Yeah,
they do now. I think the way it's set up right now is about as good as it's going to get, and this bracket exemplifies that. Well,
and I think I'll say this. I think about this all the time. Consistency is important in high school sports, right? Mm-hmm. When things stay the same, it starts creating rivalries in the playoffs that don't typically exist, right? Like you'll see a 3-year period where two teams have faced each other 2 or 3 years in a row, and somebody's
funny how that works out with the power rankings too, but it always does. It always does.
Yeah, and look, like I say it again, like Franklinton and Lakeshore on the same side of the bracket. Mm-hmm. It's not going to surprise me. No. It won't. Now I'll have the biggest tent set up on that Friday night, wherever that game's at. We might stream that one, but that'll be fantastic. Awesome. The next matchup, North Lake Christian gets St. Louis Catholic at home. Obviously, I've seen a lot of St. Louis Catholic. They're actually a pretty good football team. They spread it out a little bit. Trey Quinn is their offensive coordinator. They want to throw it a little bit. They've got some kids that can go
as long as he's not playing receiver.
Well, he can probably still suit up and hurt pretty bad if I had to guess, but I know I wouldn't want to defend it. That's for sure. Looking at this North Lake Christian squad, it's been, I won't say an up and down season. That the St. Helena loss felt like an outlier at the time, and then you see St. Helena just run through district and go undefeated.
It doesn't look so bad now.
It doesn't look as bad, and it doesn't feel as bad. And then it's playoff time. The thing that I'm interested in the most about North Lake Christian is there's like 20 seniors on this team that have all done this and been there. And they are, if you follow the North Shore, all the names, right? Mm-hmm. Cam Casnave and Jordan Willis, who I've got to give Jordan some credit. A lot of people don't see what he does because he does a lot of it defensively, but he's got, over 800 yards of offense this year between, running the ball and receiving it. Trace Crane on defense, he'll play some fullback and H-back. And then Charlie Gilmore, who I still believe is one of the best athletes on the North Shore, man on man, no matter who it is. So it's a fantastic matchup. Like I said, you say this, we won't put the cart before the horse. But it's an intriguing matchup in round 2 if Northlake can get through.
It is, and Northlake is one of is it week 1 when we saw? Yeah,
Yeah.
week 1.
Yep.
Northlake was regardless of classification, but they were as physical and athletic as a team. You talk about bus guys, like they put the pads on and they look like it's a real football team, and they
Yeah.
play that way. And Jordan Willis, like you mentioned him at defensive back, but the way that he comes downhill, I mean, it's not just him, but that defense is physical. They fly to the football. Offensive line is big. Obviously, you have Kasnave in a backfield. Like this is, you could put it all together, and I could see this team practicing for 3 or 4 more weeks.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's real. Like that's just how, especially when you look at what it might look like. Obviously, next week and the week after, like the draw in the bracket isn't the worst, even in this division. And this is a team that handled business on Friday night against a St. Louis team who's going to be well coached. They're going to get the ball out in space and do that, but handle business and go see if you can't make a run at it. But especially teams at this time of year that are so senior laden and got that experience pays dividends, and you'd like to see it pay off for those guys this year.
Yeah, I'll say this: one of the best things you can hear is, Coach Indest, said after that game that it might be the most physical and talented 2A team that he's seen, and he's seen a lot of 2A football for a long time.
Yes, he has a lot of good 2A football teams.
a lot of really good. I don't know if there's anybody better in 2A over that time. Let's move over to the last matchup here. Pope John Paul at Slaughter. Here's another really intriguing one for me, because I think what Pope John Paul does, and I love what Coach Pygott does there. I was on the phone with him last week, and just giving him credit to the size and physicality of that team. They lift weights in Slidell, I can promise you that. And they are big and strong. They're a couple plays away from winning district last week in that loss to St. Helena. But the big thing for me is they've got to stay ahead of the chains. They can't have pre-snap penalties. They can't get in long yardage situations, and they can't fall behind. And that's hard to overcome for a whole season. It's not really hard in the playoffs if you take it one game at a time and you play it right.
No, that is exactly right. Like that's the game they want to play. And you're right. Doing that over a 10-week period, it's difficult. You just got to do it once.
Yeah.
And then you got to do it again, but the whole one game at a time cliche. And you see games like this in the playoffs all the time, especially with teams seeded, the 14 and 19 seed. The styles make the fights. This is obviously a Slaughter defense that comes in over and giving up 10 points a game. And that kind of almost feels like it plays right into what Pope John Paul wants to do. Pope John Paul wants to score 14 points and hold you to 10, like that's, if they can control the game and control that time of possession and get ahead of the sticks early on, then I think that lends itself to them going on and getting by seed what would be an upset. And I think last week against St. Helena, the opposite kind of happened. With St. Helena just has, they have really good athletes. They're super talented, and that's not the game Pope John Paul wants to play. But if they could play it on their terms, and the game script kind of goes the way they want it, they can go out and win this game.
Yeah, no, it's an exciting matchup. I got another error here. Jack Roniger, linebacker. He's a junior, and Cass, when I tell you, he might be one of the best linebackers around. He is fantastic.
You're trying to graduate him already. I see what you're doing.
I tried. Well, I'm gonna send a letter to LHSA. He's out of eligibility. I saw it on North Shore Prep Reports.
That's right. That's right.
So you can't tell me I'm wrong. So look, that wraps up the playoff matchups. Let's talk a little bit about, and you brought it up a little bit, but give me one or two games that kind of intrigue you the most in these matchups.
The one that I'm maybe most excited for, Salmon and Zachary. I just can't get my head out of the result Zachary had with Liberty, and the fact that Liberty Salmon, or to me at least, are similar in the way they want to do things and how they want to do things. And when you've got a dude at quarterback, and you've also got the pieces around them, that kind of is the recipe for an upset and for that team to go up on the road. Look, this is a team that traveled. I think they went to Northwood last year in the playoffs. I believe they took a long bus trip somewhere. So they played in a playoff game, which that's number one. I think that's huge. Just the fact that you're out there, because we can sit here. The coach in me is telling you that the game's the same, and when the ball snapped, it's the same, but everything else around it is different. That's just a fact. Like that's just how it is. But they've done that, so they got experience there, and they can just go out. And I think the key for Sound, they're going to have to get ahead early because
Yeah.
I mean they can get ahead early because Zachary, that atmosphere is going to be great. That's a real home field advantage. But if they can kind of subdue that a little bit, they got a chance to go in there and pull an upset. And the other one is that Mandeville Thibodeau game. That is one that now the winner gets the good reward of going to Monroe and playing Neville. So we'll see what that looks like. But man, the fact that they played last year, speaking of having little rivalries in the playoffs, but those two teams played last year. Mandeville gets the big win that honestly last year without Shepherd was kind of almost we didn't know what we were going to get from Mandeville last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now they kind of have their quarterback position obviously solidified with the playmakers on the outside, so that's going to be a fun one as well.
Yeah, look, I'm gonna go with Slidell at Hanville. I just think high powered offense travels right, and they've done it all year. If they get punched in the mouth a little bit and they get down, they've got the offense to be able to kind of continue to fight and get back in the game. They did that numerous times early in the season against Warren Easton. You saw that, right? So that's an exciting matchup. And the other one that I'm most excited for, that I'm excited for the community and the team, is Pearl River. It's kind of a community that's starved for some success, right? They've had good teams. They've had great players, running backs specifically. It felt like for 10 years they had a running back that was going to play Division I football, But Coach Leonard in year one in that community, that'd be a massive win, home playoff win, and move on to round two and to continue play. So I'm excited about that one. Look, let's wrap up here, and we can't leave out this really important piece. Let me remove this one. But I want to move on to volleyball here, because I just think that these girls deserve so much attention. One really good thing that I've gotten recently in the last week, and we'll have it out here in the next couple of days, is all our college commits from the area for volleyball. So we'll get that on our site. We'll get that out. But some really intriguing matchups. Eric Ritchie talked a little bit about this. He kind of called all this exactly how it's going, right?
It sounded like he knew what he was talking about. He could have had me fooled, but then I look at the bracket and okay, he knows exactly what it's doing.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody knows volleyball more than that guy.
No.
He's fantastic. But Fontainebleau's going to have their hands full against Dominican. I mean, Dominican's one of the better teams in all districts, or all divisions. But this is exciting. We'll be out there tomorrow to get some coverage. We'll post some live stuff and get some pictures and some post game interviews from coaches and players. But I'll say this: look at the seeds of the North Shore. How impressive for an area of the state that really just doesn't get a lot of recognition. I don't know if there's a single area with this many good teams in the entire state.
That's what I was going to say. Like you can understand one or two, but it's six that are not just there, but they're all in the top 8. And when you think volleyball, you think you got the powers in New Orleans with Mount Carmel and Dominican, Baton Rouge, with St. Joe's, Lafayette, obviously with STM and Turlings. But you're right, you don't think immediately about the North Shore. But when you look at this list of games here, and it's not just the Division I teams. I mean, it's all of them. Obviously, Hannon's been doing it so well for so long. Northlake Christian, like it isn't just one-offs. This is programs, like real programs that it's tremendous for these young ladies, and it's tremendous for this area. And I'll say it again. I think I said it earlier in the show. The event at the Cajun Dome it's great. It is a great event, especially for this Slidell Southside game. I think Eric Ritchie was talking about when Southside played. I was there because I was at STM, and we were playing at the same time or right after. I was there.
The one.
Yes, and it was it was great. It is a really, really neat thing. But and just watching high school volleyball matches is something that these girls are so athletic and so they're competitive. It's crazy. But for this area, wild. This many teams that are seated this high, it's almost like we expected all these teams to be there.
Yeah.
It's very impressive.
And look, tomorrow's going to be a big day. I've got to give some special shout out to Coach Coker in Covington getting that big playoff win last week. I thought that was huge for the program, and Eric Ritchie brought him up a little bit. And what a great job he's done there, and kind of in that Danny Tullis, mold of following him around and coaching under him. So it'll be a great day in Lafayette. We're looking forward to it. Look, lastly, we're once again here at Game Day Cuts in Madisonville. Fantastic place. I don't know if you can see everything around me. There's stuff everywhere. I get my hair cut here. If you don't like it, they'll do a better job with your hair. I promise you that. But they don't have much to work with me anymore. But it's a fantastic place. They also have head massages and all that other stuff that you want, waxing, beard trims, all those other things. So get over to Game Day Cuts. Make sure you tell them that North Shore Prep Report sent you. Cass, any last thoughts here on we're 48 hours away from score watching.
I know. No, that's it. One of the best nights. It's like you get so excited when football season gets here. And then, like, at least I'm like this, like you just start counting down. Okay, we only got 8 more weeks, 6 more. Yeah. You count down. Then you get excited when the playoffs come, and it's like you almost don't want it to end. But this is such a great, like you said earlier, such a great time of year. And then when you throw in all the happenings with volleyball tomorrow, it's like a 4-day weekend. I mean, it's going to be fun. Friday night is one of the, especially, now there's 8 teams that are not playing in the select side, 4 not playing. So the next 2 weeks really almost feel like first round games where there's games going on all over the state. And that's really fun to follow. So I am fired up for it, fired up for all of our teams in this area. And then hopefully our volleyball teams get us off to a good start tomorrow.
Yeah, one thing
especially the Hawks.
Yeah, I want all 6 to win. So, we'll see how that goes. One thing that I'll say, and I brought this up in my storylines last week, was, a bunch of seniors last week played their last game, right? Mm-hmm. And they kind of knew it. The hardest part about the playoffs for me, for the seniors that gives so much, is everybody's going in with a chance to win, right? And, Coach Salt and I talked a little bit about this because we're talking about, hey, that feeling in the dome when you lose, right? And he said something that I'll never forget. And he said, Mike, everybody cries at the end, but only one team gets to cry happy tears.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's the truth.
And it's so true. And, I know you're an athlete and a sports guy. I don't know if there's any single sport that last game is harder, because you don't ever get to mimic that again. You can go play basketball, and you can go play some, adult league, baseball, and you can do some of that stuff, but you don't get, if you're done, you don't get to put pads on and go play football again.
No, that's I don't think I've ever thought about it like that, but you're absolutely right. And I'm thinking back to my last high school football game, and I was way more devastated then than I was in my last college baseball game. I know there's a difference between being 18 and 22. Like, I get all that, but you're right. The final football game, because when you take your helmet off, you're never putting a helmet back on.
It's over.
And that's just it's a hard truth. You're never doing it. And speaking of those guys, especially the last week, that kind of knew they were playing their last game in week 10. What I think makes the playoffs so special, and to me, and we can get into this in 4 weeks, the hardest round to win a playoff game is the semifinals. And not just because the other team obviously is really good, because everyone talks about getting to the dome. They want to get to the dome. They want to get to the state championship. They want to get there. Once you're there, you're there. Like, is it sad when you lose the state championship? Absolutely. But the game before you get there, and I've been fortunate enough to coach in both football, in which we won a semifinal game and we lost a semifinal game. The atmospheres on camp, like, it's the semifinal round is my favorite round for that reason.
Look, I tell everybody, and I tell all the kids that coach all the time, the goal is to get to the dome. But if you can get to Thanksgiving, that week
it's the best week
so
of football.
Different. There's nobody in school. You're practicing in the morning. You're eating with the team together. It's just that whole feeling is different.
Thanks.
And then,
100%.
Lastly, when you've got the police escort and you're heading in the bus to the Superdome and you're pulling up to the Superdome, for practice, the game day before, and then that game, it's just there's nothing like it.
You mentioned Thanksgiving, so I don't want this thing to go all night, but the year that I was at STM, we won state was the year of COVID. So we played on December 30th. So for
Wow.
us that year, it was Christmas week that we got to practice. And it
Oh,
was just as awesome. But you're right, Thanksgiving week, like that's the make it to Thanksgiving. Make it to Thanksgiving. Like that's where you see the real program start. That week is so much fun. So I can't wait. You can tell I'm fired up about it.
well, look, I'll tell you, I don't remember it a whole lot, but I'll never root for the Lagrange Gators again. And that was 23 years ago that they beat us from my last football game, my last real football game. So
There you
uh,
go.
that's awesome. Well, look, for myself, Mike McMillan, Cass Hargis, thanks again to Game Day Cuts for hosting us here. Phenomenal place, phenomenal staff and crew, really clean, really neat. They do a great job, have a great product here. Get over to Madisonville. Make sure you tell them that North Shore Prep Report sent you. We'll follow up Saturday morning. Make sure you catch us on Red River Roundup with Marshall. Cass and I will be here to kind of recap all those games. And then follow us for the next few days of volleyball. It's going to be a fantastic time. I'm going to try to go get some sleep. I think this might be the last night to get it here over the next few days.
Enjoy. I'm a little jealous of you. I might see you Friday. I might see you Friday.
Well, let me know. We'll definitely celebrate together. That's for sure.
For sure. No doubt.
All right, Cass. Appreciate you. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you on Saturday morning.